Well, it's time to get this moving. Who will move on to the grand finals? Map number 1 begins right now.
You know, Kalaris, this is two very dominant team so far in this tournament, but Method NA, I had a chance to talk to them quite a few times, and the amount of respect that they really do have for Kjelll's Angels is remarkable. They were saying, look, this is a team that I'm not going to use the word scared, but you could tell there's a lot of respect going on there, and Kjelll's Angels definitely deserved it.
No, definitely. I mean, if you look at how clean some of these runs have been for both of these teams, you see Kjelll's Angels safe take for their Dark Heart Thicket, for example, in the first round, 13 minutes, 54 seconds, compared to something like a 16 minutes on the other side for Method NA. It's much faster for Kjelll's Angels, and in the end, it's going to be going up against one another. I'm planting my flag on the side of EU. I imagine you're going to plant yours on NA.
Yeah, gotta do that, gotta do that. A little bit of NA versus EU on the desk as well, but another thing to note, this pool already going to start to look a little bit different than the Nells that we've seen in the past, and that is because we are in a 25. We've already said it, but we really do need to stress the 25 going to be one of the most difficult Nells that we really have seen, so the trash pool is going to look a little bit different here. We're not going to see as much of an all-in.
Yeah, the 24 Fortifieds that we're used to from Neltharian's Lair in the past are obviously very different, so you can deal with trash quite quickly here. In this instance, it's just the Grievous that's going to be a bit more of a problem for them overall, and then the bosses on Tyrannical. Well, you know, China had the hard end of that in 2017 for the first boss, but here we're going to see how they're able to deal with it.
And now we'll throw a few more regions up against that rock. We're going to have to see if Rockmora will be able to stand under the pressure. It's an important thing to bring up, though. The Rockmora is not, as much as at home, you know, you cruise right through him. It's a boss that you almost don't need to show too much respect for. Sometimes you even do avoid those skitters. You avoid some of those mechanics at home. When you're on a 25, that is not something that we expect from these teams as they start to pull that remaining trash leading up to the boss.
Absolutely. He's taking the Hulk here as well with all of this. You throwing down the Solar Beam to just kind of make sure that a little bit of this controlled. Usually we will see DKs now start to kite this a little bit. You can see there to the bottom for Kjelll's Angels, Divine Field is moving away for the moment, and obviously you don't want to be turning that Hulk towards any of the rest of the group, as it will do that frontal AoE that you've got to be very mindful of.
And keep your eyes on this as well. Divine Field doing a very good job at that kiting, because now as the trash still is getting taken down, still inside of that Starfall from the Moonkin, Divine Field now is kiting back in the right direction towards the boss. Obviously there's an RP here as well, so he can stay up at the top as one person gets that RP activated, not losing too much time. But Kalaris, this isn't going to be the only trash pack where that kiting matters, so everybody at home should be keeping that in their minds as we move forward past Rockmora, but let's get through that wall first.
That's right. So Rockmora starts, obviously that big crash that forces those crystal shards on the ground. If moving around with those will cause yourself a little bit of damage. Likewise, sometimes you see everyone grouping at the front of the boss here to make sure that those little adds are going to be coming to the front of the boss, which makes it easier for the tank to pick up. You don't necessarily want those straying around and moving about and hitting other things, but then you need to move out of the way of the front of him, because again, he will do like a frontal AoE cone, which you do not want to get clipped by as a DPS or healer.
Definitely do not. You can see some of those skitters coming up right now. You want to quickly take them down to mitigate the damage that he is actually going to put out across the entire party. Heroism going to run off on the side of Method NA. Before it does fall, they get him to around 68%. You're seeing how long it really is taken to whittle down this stone. Rockmora on the other end, 72% for Kjelll's Angels, still inside of that Heroism. They get a little bit of a later pull, and you can see because those skitters are down, not too much damage going out to Method NA. But I want to go back to one more point. Divine Field, the way that he was kiting earlier, we expect to see that again. You see as Rockmora is moving farther away from that wall, we expect a Yui to kind of pop up here and then head back towards the direction that they need to be going.
Yeah, I like the control in terms of at least controlling where the puddles of kind of gas are and when these actual little adds are going to be dying. One thing that is important to note there as well is the longer those little adds stay alive for Kjelll's Angels, the sub-row is going to get some more benefit off of that compared to Method NA, where they just kind of want to blast them down and get rid of them. So maybe we could see a little bit of catch-up here for Kjelll's Angels as they fell behind when that trash was a thing at the start.
Warlock going to be another person who can potentially turn them into damage factories, can turn them into a lot of soul shards, potentially just throwing a Curse of Agony onto them to generate soul shards off of that, but also getting in that quick drain at the end, going to help bring them down for the group, but also that's a free Agony up onto the boss, and you can really spec into making that a lethal combination. And we can see right now Warlock going to be be pumping, casting Unstable Affliction after Unstable Affliction. You just see him coming out, pouring out, and that's going to be a lot of damage for this Warlock. So both groups getting decent amounts of damage from those adds.
Yeah, and let's talk about the strengths of these comps in general. I'm wondering if you're going to agree here, Rich, is that for Method NA, their comp for me feels like a very brute force, in-your-face composition, whereas Kjelll's Angels is a little bit more technical in execution. They've already got themselves a good amount of percent in trash, therefore something like the Rogue, for example, later on down the line, could make it like much easier to skip little bits and try and be a bit more finicky with their tactics. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's a really important way to look at it, because both of these comps get to do different things.
Yeah.
You look on the side of Method NA, and it's basically, I'm going to hit you really hard, and you're not going to get a chance to hit me. Warlock going to be able to put on Sacrilege when it wants to. That's not, I wouldn't say it's as technical. It's just, okay, you're going to throw up your seed. You want to be doing that anyway, and then everything's going to waddle on over to you as it dies. On the other end, we are going to see that Rogue. That Rogue's going to allow skips, and we actually see that cheat death proc. Method NA not looking so healthy there, but they're going to get through the boss without losing anyone. Rockmora, 9% about to crumble in the likes of Kjelll's Angels. They are just slightly behind here, and like you said, they are the team that's going to have utility. They're going to need to be using it in these future pools, but they don't want to lose any of the utility of cheat death, of Purgatory, of their battle reses before Rockmora falls.
There's got to be a little sweat on the brow whenever one of those big crashes comes out from Rockmora. However, 2% left, it should be going down, and they'll continue down that slide. Let's see how much Method NA is going to do here. Usually this is where the big kiting occurs, right? And as you mentioned before, with that Warlock, with Sacrilege, you can get a lot of value out of that composition, in particular right here, right now.
It has been really interesting though, Kalaris, because we've seen so many different interpretations of how this pool really should go.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, some people have actually gone way up to the top and taken everything with them. However, here on this, I mean, technically it being tyrannical, you could probably get away with quite a bit.
Oh, definitely. I think that this is one of the ones where we go for the larger pool. Sometimes we don't even see people kite this one, but when you do have that Warlock paired up with the Death Knight, it does seem like a good move. You can get everything in with the pool, and then you don't really want to have to deal with those rocks that are being tossed around by the adds. That is one of the things that becomes so threatening, and you see Divine Field getting chunked. Luckily for him, Purgatory not going to be procced on the side of Kjelll's Angels. They're trying to catch up right now to Method NA. You can see 9% behind on the trash, but this cluster right here, this little death ball that they have managed to make with the trash that the Moonkin is really laying into, that is what will catch them up.
And that's where some of the more reliant AoE DPS can come out, because they use Solar Beam, right, to initially control it and then start kiting.
Yeah, very much. I mean, that is a very good way to get this pool started, and then on top of that, the Moonkin, not only with the utility, but also with the big damage.
Nicely done there, as Kjelll's Angel is going to clean on this up for now, and then be moving away eventually. But you know, that bolstering eventually made this one a really big fella, and I can't even see his health bar. I don't actually know how much health he has left, but
that's just about the biggest beefy boy we ever have seen running through the caverns here. I wouldn't be surprised if we tilted the camera up if he was actually right up to the ceiling.
Right, yeah.
Don't think we've ever looked at the ceiling before in this, so this is going to take a while to kite, and you can see how much this really has slowed them down. Incredible damage does come out from their Monk. That's going to be one of the things that we definitely look at. Finally, we are going to see them taken down. I don't think we've seen anything more bolstered than that.
No, that was huge. That was, yeah. But at least they were able to stay alive and not kind of cause any wipe off the back of it. They are currently ahead in terms of that trash percentage, so we're going to have to see Method be a bit more conscious about what they're pulling later on down towards, you know, save the final boss, for example.
And that is definitely something we need to pay attention to, but as I noted with that last pack, it was a very large pull on the side of Kjelll's Angels. They're going to be able to get past that 62% threshold. They surpass Method NA, even though Method NA is now moved up a little bit further here. So even though that got incredibly bolstered, it seems like that pull was the right move. Both of these teams very much neck and neck. 0 deaths on both sides, right up into the room of the second boss, Ul'Durag.
Yeah, so for Kjelll's Angels on the other side, once again, there's still a Hulk in there. You want to be able to pull and to at least turn that away to make sure that it's not going to do too much damage. You've got those small little casters in there that you can interrupt and make sure that they're not going to be doing too much as well. But of course, those Shapers are just going to be pulled all the way back. Where are they going with this? Just getting a little bit of kiting going once again, because, you know, for the tank, all of these big packs are still very threatening in terms of damage.
It's crazy, you know, and I feel like because we've done this dungeon so many times and it's been around so long, you really do forget. Shapers, Pelters, Hulks, they're some of the most annoying adds to really deal with, and all of them annoying in such a beautiful symphony that putting them all together can just be an absolute disaster here, but masterfully dealt with by Kjelll's Angels and Method NA. Method NA already getting Ul'Durag pulled, and one thing that we do want to note as they start to move through these mechanics, mechanics, this is one of those fights that actually has an intermission phase, which can almost be a hard checkpoint to divide teams.
No, absolutely. You don't want to be hitting too many of them. The ball under the hat trick. Thankfully, they were able to pick the right one. I wasn't watching. I was watching Kjell's Angel screen. They pulled Ullrog as well.
You say that when you're playing as well.
There you go. That's what I do. That's what I do. And you have even other mechanics that you're going to have to be careful of, like those hands coming up from the ground there. You've got the 4 directions that they're coming in. You can sneak in between, making sure you're not going to get hit, because they do hit very hard, actually.
Yeah, I will say as well, though, you got some pretty mobile compositions to deal with it as well. Having those 2 melees, 1 caster tends to work out very well, and that also will be something that's lucrative as we move a little bit further on into this map pool. But now, Ullrog going to be going down on the side of Kjell's Angels, and I'm actually going to keep an eye on it here. I'm not going to rely on anyone else in the party, Kalaris, to get this one.
Yeah, and whilst this is going on, welcome to everybody from StarCraft. You may be hearing a familiar voice right now. It's Kalaris. Hi, I love you all, and you can join us here for the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, as we're currently in the winners bracket finals between North America and EU.
I really do like the sound of Kalar-Rich, though.
Kalar-Rich, you like that one? We can do that. We can do that.
First duo, we already got a name, but we are going to see Ullrog substantially further along for Method NA, as they are going to be working on their idol now to get him back up in this next intermission phase for them. But this pretty much indicates to us that they're a full intermission phase ahead of Kjell's Angels, which can be quite a substantial gap.
Yeah, definitely. So Ullrog here. Beyond that, I mean, aside from those idols as well, where you could see A-Shine get a little bit more DPS down into the boss, aside from that, there's not really that many more mechanics that you have to be fearful of. There is a bit of a kind of the landslide in on you that you would have to be a bit careful of as well. You make sure you don't want to be stacked up when that's going to be hitting, because otherwise you're just taking extra damage that's pretty effective from the boss.
I gotta give props right now to J.B. This is one of the reasons that he is a fun healer to watch. Very, very good at pumping out that damage. He's going to be putting out good damage here while never really letting his group fall too far behind. And that's one of the reasons that Druid stays a valid pick. Obviously, the Paladin has been more in favor.
Yeah, for anyone just tuning in right now as well, just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on, the percentage that you're seeing above the team's names mean how much trash they have currently cleared. That means that once they reach the 100, you have to reach 100% to complete the dungeon and kill all the bosses. So you see, whilst they're on the same boss, Method NA currently ahead on the boss, Kjell's Angels was able to kill off a lot extra trash before this, so they're still kind of neck and neck, I would say.
Definitely. I think that one of the things to note, though, is the next pull is going to be the moment where we really see how true the lead is, because there's some extra trash that you have a lot of options in these dungeons. You don't necessarily need to pull everything, and there is going to be a little bit of a pool. There's going to be a group of ads that we expect them to skip as well, around a little bit of a pillar, and then a big room filled with trash. Yeah. That could be the opportunity for Method NA to really catch up on that trash percentage while still maintaining their lead as far as bosses are concerned.
I mean, I wouldn't even mind if Method NA went and got some of the crocodiles, the crocolists down towards the bottom. The good old pug strategy. I mean, they are behind in terms of percent, and you don't really want to have to deal with that much trash down towards the last boss, because it's all very threatening. You've got the scorpions down there, as well as all the other things that are actually very threatening.
It's a whole darn zoo. I would like to see the crocodiles pulled as well, and we are going to see. That's exactly where he's going, straight into the pool of the crocodiles, and we expect them to be pulled right alongside the rest of the trash. Now, the nice thing about these crocodiles, they are easy percentage, essentially. Oh, yeah. You look at them, they don't really have too many mechanics. We talk about the Shapers. We talk about how scary they can really be. We talk about the Pelters being a dangerous pack. These guys right here, they don't do anything. You just hit them and they die. But some of the other trash that they are pulling it to can get a little bit risky.
Yeah, definitely. The Grubmaster is something that eventually will send out like a little worm, and it will start like running around, crawling around, and if you do not kill that in time, it spawns like another big worm, so that's annoying as well.
Squirming and wriggling, it's not really fun to watch at it, and it can get pretty frisky.
That's right, that's right. So making sure that you deal with that is very important, but as you can see, the kiting was good here from Bandname. He's been able to take it all away from here, and actually they did even just banish away one of the mobs there whilst that was going on.
We see a lot of banishing going on, and I'm a little curious. One of the things that you can be doing is maybe wearing Safus at certain moments when you know you're going to be getting the banishes going on. So banish is twofold. You can use it to proc Safus, which will give you a speed buff and a damage buff, and we can actually see after the next banish if the Warlock does speed up by any means, that means we'll be wearing it. But the other thing that does is it does protect from affixes, so it is a very nice thing to do throughout the entirety of this map pool, a very strong CC.
And as you can see now, Method NA with 76% against 79, 9, and we're seeing that Kjell's Angels just starting all of this to go down towards that next boss. There was a small moment there where we either had a Sap or a Redemption on one of the minions so that they could sneak past and make sure they don't go anywhere near pulling that trash mob from before, because that one's a bit of a nuisance and you never really need it for percent.
All the way back at Rockmora, you looked at these comps and you said, is it fair to say that Kjell's Angels has a lot of utility? They're going for some of the headier strategies.
Yeah.
And now as we see them having so much trash before they even do get to this third boss, this seems like an indicator to me that they're going to be utilizing that rogue to potentially stealth past those scorpions that you highlighted. We know that that's a pack that can be very tough. I think a potential skip could be coming after the third boss, and that may be where Kjell's Angels really pick up time.
Yeah, some manipulation of the packs in front of the boss as well is what I'm wanting to see. We see a lot of monks being able to just kind of, you initially pull the boss at the same time as scorpions, and then you actually kind of CC them a little bit to make sure you can reposition behind those. So maybe we'll see some stuff like that as well. But now just being able to take these last trash packs in front of Naraxus, of course, while we have Method NA already engaging the boss.
And they are going to be flying out of the gates right now. But one thing that you do want to notice is the Devouts need to be dealt with. The more that you can deal with the Devouts, the better, because it is going to be an unforgiving mechanic on 25 when we do have the bosses being tougher than ever. And if you don't take them down, it will buff the boss. The boss will be dealing more damage to the team. And you can see they're pulling the Devouts away, not letting Naraxus eat them. If Naraxus eats them, that is where the buff is actually picked up. But Naraxus is going to be trying to eat the tank as well.
A lot of stuff that you've got to watch in front as melee. There's a lot of green goop that, as you can see coming out there, will be thrown down. It's not massive amounts of damage, but it's definitely a nuisance. So we want to step out of that into the little cracks and crevices that it's been created. And likewise, you see those small green pools at the back. You can see the tank now has moved away from Naraxus. Why? Because he's slowly being dragged now towards the boss. And if he is eaten, that is bad news bears as well. But those puddles that you see on the floor are slowing down that drag. So he can come back in. It's always important to come back in at the right time as well, unless you want your melee getting whacked right away by Naraxus.
And the thing is, those pools, yes, they do slow, but with a Death Knight tank, it's not the most mobile tank class. It's really kind of the one weakness that we do see from those Blood Death Knights. All you're going to have is the Wraith Walk, so it has to get away very early. What's catching your eye here?
A lot of ads being pulled here to Naraxus by Kjell's Angels, and they can just get extra damage here off a Shine while this is going on, thanks to Shuriken Storm into Eviscerate. That is a good composition. Even just dropping the Solar Beam down here to kind of negate whatever they can do on that left-hand side. But they do need to make up a little bit of time. They're going to try and make it up completely down at the bottom. Almost pulling, I think that is the entirety of the percent they need trash-wise.
Yeah, and that's why I think that they're using this rogue twofold right now.
Oh, yeah.
Potentially they're going to use it to get a skip going after this. And the nice thing is, these are the crocodiles that we were talking about. They don't do nothing. This is so great to actually have them right up against the worm, because like you said, if you don't play rogue, you are going to have the rogue just throwing out those shurikens, going to get full combo points, and can invest all those combo points into a finisher move. Going to do big damage here on Naraxus, and that's why we see the rogue pull ahead on damage, while they're also getting percentage. This is how Kjell's Angels can catch up here. Yes, they're behind by that 30% on boss health, but they are starting to look like an absolute omen for Method NA.
Yeah, this could really go down to the wire, because as much as they are ahead in terms of that boss, they're not by any means ahead in terms of the trash, and the trash down at the bottom does take a little while to actually kill off. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we could definitely have a very, very close finish, Rich.
The main thing that we need to see from Kjell's Angels, if they do get that 100% trash, we don't want to see them pull any extra trash, because we do know that that whole room does pull when they get to the final boss. So we need to see a paralysis or an in cap come out to actually keep some of those guys out of the fight, so they can just go ahead, work on that last boss, get that full percentage, do this very efficiently. Right now we are going to see the Method NA getting pulled in. If they survive this, there shouldn't be another mechanic like that coming out from this boss, Naraxus. Now at 15% for Method NA, they need to do this next trash pack very clean. I just want to applaud both these squads right now, Kalaris.
Yeah.
25, 0 deaths.
I was about to say it as well. 0 deaths on either side. It's been super clean. You can see that it's been well practiced, well orchestrated by the two teams. I'm just curious to see how Kjell's Angels is exactly going to execute down towards in that bottom room, because again, for Method NA, it's very simple. You're going down there, you're killing things, then you kill the boss. For Kjell's Angels on the other side, it's not quite that simple.
It's a rogue skip. It's a potential cheeky CC coming out on their end. So yes, Kjell's Angels have a little bit more of, instead of that brute force strategy that Method NA has been employing, they have to go for something that is a lot more clever, but it might pay off. This is so down to the wire here ultimately. And like we said with these 25s, I think the main thing that we need to kind of think about with these two squads, as Divine Field starts to get low, he does get picked back up, is the fact that on the 25, they really do respect the key. They know exactly the speed that they need to go. Sometimes those 22s, those 23s, those 24s, you go, okay, I think we can go for the massive pull here, especially with teams this good.
You can get ahead of yourself. You can kind of say, all right, we are this good. That's fine. Let's just take a huge pack. And it's like, oops, a death here, a death there. And again, remember out there, guys, if you're just new to this format, every death adds 5 extra seconds to your timer at the very end. So very important to know. With now Arena Access 7%, and you can see here, Method NA 93%. They just need one more pack and the boss.
Nice little gateway comes out too. That ensures that they manage to get to these ads without having any trouble from anyone left in this cave. And now we're going to have to see how they ultimately decide to do it. And they're not going for anything crazy. On the 25, you don't necessarily want to pull those packs straight to the boss.
Rich, this is going to be so close. Kjelll's Angels 100%. How are they going to do this now? They've got that shroud of concealment, of course, to be able to get there. Method NA on the other side is killing off this pack. They don't want to pull it with the boss. It's still a tyrannical boss here. So very, very deadly indeed.
Here is the insurance as well. Having the druid run ahead. Yeah, you want to make sure that they stealth past here. It looks like everybody's going to be able to get through, but still, these 2 scorpions on your screen right now for Kjelll's Angels, everything in this room gets aggro the second that you touch the boss. So we need to see how they deal with it, and then we're going to see that incap come out, and they should just be able to deal with everything here. And you can see running out right now, that square icon trying to pull that trash away, the additional trash away. It looks like everything is working. They moved Droggle to the other end, and now they are already on the boss, and it appears that they have pulled ahead of Method NA.
All right, we're going to be in a 3% window in all of this. 6%, 96% on one side here. And Dark Rule is all about actually control. He's going to be spawning this Molten Giant, which eventually you need to kind of run into walls and things like that. If you're in full melee comp, you can just spawn everything right there and then, and he will get stunned on that wall. And then from there, your tank's going to have active mitigation against some of these abilities against Dark Rule. Otherwise, you will get punted back.
Dark demolishes the world there, and all of a sudden, this is a huge race just coming down to the boss's health. If nobody dies, this is going to be 100% those meters on your screen. 85% on both sides. This is going to be a photo finish, and keep in mind, this is a best-of-3 series. This is the first map. Whoever gets this has a huge advantage, and this is for the grand final. The winner of this series, the first team to guarantee top 2.
Oh, they're very close to that. Look, there's a safety route coming out from Doru on that right-hand side, because if they go near that Scorpion, that is deadly at the moment. 77% against 7. What a way to start this series. You see, they position themselves behind that wall, because when that Molten Crash comes down, they need to make sure that they are behind it. They will take huge damage. Divine Field goes quite low. He still has Purgatory, though, so it is okay for this instance.
And they managed to move away from that ad just a little bit. You say it's the safety route, and instantly the knockback comes out onto the ad. They're going to be able to focus down that Charskin, but still, big cleave damage coming out on both sides. Phenomenally well handled, but all of a sudden, it was Kjelll's Angels who were ahead. Now for a second, Method NA are ahead. Now it's back to completely even, 64% all around. I do not think we've seen a closer matchup. Expect really big damage, though, to come out from Kjelll's Angels now when the Charskin does drop. Charskin on the other side going to be moving slightly further away from the boss. A nice knockback, though. Now they can get the cleave going as well. This is so well executed on both sides.
The insane thing is, Rich, is that this damage keeps fluctuating back and forth. A little bit of percentage extra on Kjelll's Angels now. Look at that. They've taken the lead with the 1% extra, but no doubt Method NA is going to be battling back soon, trying to kill it off.
And they're about to have their Charskin down, and that was where we really did see another resurgence coming in from Kjelll's Angels. It is back and forth, 51% now for Kjelll's Angels. They need to move away from this trash once again. That could be where everything goes wrong. Look in those roots right now. That Scorpion is looking just to knock them out of this tournament, try to knock them out of this winner's bracket.
Divine Field absolutely needs to make sure he has mitigation, because if he gets knocked back in any which way direction, he could be pulling trash. That would be catastrophic here for their endeavors. They actually bait the Molten Char on towards that wall there once again in terms of their spawn position. Moves this back to the left-hand side, 40% against 46%.
And now the heroism has been activated on the side of Kjelll's Angels. It appears that that cooldown is also up for Method NA. But Kjelll's Angels is really starting to pull ahead here. Method NA needs to pull the trigger quickly. Otherwise, like you said, Kolaris, this may be Kjelll's Angels' opportunity to close it out.
They've taken a massive lead with this.
There's heroism.
There's heroism, but I don't know if it's going to be enough right now. Look at that. Kjelll's Angels has pulled dramatically ahead.
It all comes down to these ads, and we do see Divine Field in the perfect position here to just stay away from all of them. It doesn't matter that we may see more effective uptime out of the heroism from Method NA. It appears that Kjelll's Angels may be able to close this one out. 32% from Method NA, 23 on Dark Rule from Kjelll's Angels, and it looks like they are out of the hardest part of this fight. They have good real estate here to potentially close this one out.
Here comes the Molten Giant once again. They're actually just rooting it. They're completely ignoring it. Kjelll's Angels here is is going on a gambit. They just want to be able to bring down Darkwool as fast as possible while ignoring him. He takes down the wall, though. Oh, no. As for now, we're going to have another Mullen Charming. Kjelll's Angels, they have to do some serious damage control here.
It is now or nothing. One more wall does pop up in the nick of time. Already going to be down. They're going to be able to get the stun out onto the Charskin. 5%. If they cannot get this before the Charskin makes its way back into the group, this could be a full wipe. But with 2%, it looks like Kjelll's Angels may be able to get it down. Oh,
they've done it. Oh,
they're going to see 2 deaths come in. Their 2 deaths may be the...
2 deaths may be huge.
5 seconds going to be added by those deaths.
Not
3
enough.
seconds left, 3%, and just like that, I think we are going to see Kjelll's Angels close it out.
Oh.
What a finish.
What a game. What a game.
It comes down to the deaths at the end of
49 in terms of timer. Of course, we're a +2 compared to that now, Rob.
Well, if Kjelll's Angels can win this, they will guarantee themselves at least 2nd place. Method needs to win this to stay alive.
And I also want to note here, in case that you are a longtime MDI watcher and maybe you haven't kept up to date with this particular dungeon, Warlock not going to be able to do the same things that it used to be able to do as far as that enslaved demon tactic that we used to see. So the question is, what is Method NA really looking to do here to best Kjelll's Angels? We can see Kjelll's Angels instantly popping their lust here, going for a very big pull.
Yeah, and you saw as well, Sira just running on forwards by the looks of things to eventually get themselves set up later on down the line as well as JB. Again, these strategies for EU and NA, very well versed. They're going to be trying to kill off some stuff here, then eventually try and skip all the way up to the next level to be able to then eventually, I think it's like 4 deaths that come in after that, so it's calculated deaths.
And the other thing that I want to know, yes, these strategies are very well refined, and you look at the last dungeon, you look at Nels, which is our first dungeon in this best of 3, and you say, okay, this is a relatively linear dungeon for the most part, and you see just completely different strategies come out from Method NA and Kjelll's Angels. This dungeon also, in a lot of ways, appears to be one of the more linear ones compared to maybe Eye of Ajara. Here are those deaths coming in that you did talk about. That jump comes in, then we're going to see those reses come in, and everybody's going to be brought up to where they need to be. But the question is, where will we see the divergence between these two teams? Are we going to see similar strats?
Some of these lashes can be very, very deadly indeed, but everyone will pick them up and just start AoEing away. Method NA, again, this is their counterpick. This is where they find their comfort. So let's see if they can start ramping things up. Once all of these lashes are dead, they want to AoE them down as much as possible, as carefully as possible, because again, that bolstering for anybody new out there for MDI, if one dies earlier, that will then buff everything around it. So you can get like really high health pools at just what looks like low percentage, and you got to be careful with that.
And that's the basic thing here, and that is why things like that Banish are going to be very nice on the side of the Warlock. That's going to keep those ads out of the fight. But the thing really is to note, they are trying to kill trash evenly, and when we move forward in this dungeon, there are going to be moments where you really can't do that because the health pools are very different between the ads. So that is where things get tricky, but now we're getting up to the first boss on the side of Method NA. They just have one more pool, and another nice thing about these ads is they do kind of telegraph it, as we do see Marv go down for a second there.
Yep.
They do telegraph some of the mechanics of this boss.
Yeah, they definitely do. So, for example, they'll tether to one player and then eventually like drag towards them. But one thing that's important to note as well, Rich, is that before we're actually going into this first boss, we're already seeing as much as both runs have looked very similar, there has been slight differences in trash percentage. So this will allow Kjelll's Angels to potentially skip some things later on if they so desire.
You know, you've been doing a really good job as well of kind of telling everybody who's new exactly what is going on, and I want to make sure that everybody new here kind of knows why this demonic tree is so green. Do you know why it's so green?
I don't know why it's so green. What happened?
So he's actually filled up with chlorophyll.
Oh, no.
So Agronoc's going to be engaged on the side of Kjelll's Angels, and as you mentioned, they do have an additional 3% of trash down. Kill timer going to be completely even. Every death is going to be an additional 5 seconds against your time. Yep. But Agronoc's starting to get kind of low from Kjelll's Angels. What do they need to be worrying about here?
Just a few things. Obviously, the ads that are spawning can cause a considerable amount of damage, and actually seeing there a few circles on the floor as well that they're just going to have to dodge on out of. But for the most part, it being a fortified dungeon, there's not a huge amount of threat from some of these bosses where you would have like Tyrannical. Obviously, we had Tyrannical in our previous dungeon, and that can get really scary on some of the bosses, and they take a long time to kill on Tyrannical. tyrannical.
They
too.
definitely do. I mean, we were kind of on those bosses for much longer than we are used to, especially being on the 25. A big difference that has come out here. Kjelll's Angels, they use their heroism, which is going to give them a huge damage buff, a huge haste buff. They use that at the first pull. So they use it to get down trash, which means it will be coming back up in 5 minutes. On the other end, Mythic NA holds it, uses it on this boss, which means who knows if it'll actually come up in time to use it again in this dungeon, but it's going to allow them to get more damage and uptime onto the boss, but they're still behind on trash percentage and on boss health.
And this is some of the reasons why I was mentioning before, I feel like something like Cathedral, similar to Upper Karazhan that we saw in one of our previous series, isn't the best of counter picks. I think you want to try and take people to somewhere that they're very uncomfortable, but something like Cathedral, everyone's kind of comfortable with it now. Not when it was released, that was terrifying, but nowadays, you know, everyone's pretty comfy here.
Still makes me a little bit uncomfortable, but last time when we saw that scenario pop up, I kind of posed one question to you, and I'm going to pose it again here. When we looked at that Karazhan, I said, where are those scary moments? Where are the moments that a team really can mess up? And when we look at Cathedral of Eternal Night, yes, all these teams going to be super well versed. It seems like something that could be volatile. Either team could have a good performance here. Kjelll's Angels could potentially close out the series, but where can Mythic NA really pull ahead? What are those scary moments for you in this dungeon?
Scary moments. I'm thinking the trash up towards the top here, I don't think is too impactful, obviously, as they're going to eventually head up. Interesting thing to note, though, before we actually really get on that, is that Mythic NA has pulled some of the trash before going up. This is where they're going to make up a little bit of that percentage, because usually after, like, Smash Spite, for example, you see everyone trying to deal with those running away trash packs that are very, very high in terms of percentage, and that's somewhere you really don't want to mess up.
Exactly, and now I think the scary moments for me are going to be based around the keys, going to be based around the trash that has different health percentages here. It's going to be a little bit harder to get it down evenly. Maybe after we actually get past this next boss and get to that spider area where we see the bigger spider and then all the tiny spiders, that might be the place where it gets a little bit unruly. But we're going to have to see as now we move in to the second boss room. They need to get through this trash pack, they need to get through this mini boss, and then they will be able to engage the boss.
And the conventional pull here for most teams has been you pull all the little guys together, get them and AoE them down, try and interrupt as much as possible, try and get those stuns down, because they do cause a lot of pain if you're not careful. But other tactics we've actually seen are, even on bolstering, people have pulled Gazerax with some of these mobs and just tried to focus down Gazerax hard, because he has a little bit more health than all these other little fellas around here, but that's fraught with danger and not advisable. They may try it. Let's see if they do here with the scavengers. Yes, they're going to. So the scavengers are there, and they can potentially spawn books, etc. if they get scary.
I think I like the way that they actually do pull it, because, right, they don't go for that massive pull that you might see on your 15, where you can say, okay, let's focus down Gazerax, still be getting effective cleave going, and then we don't really have to worry about the bolster. Here they do it with a pack. You have the Moonkin. It's going to be able to get that spread pressure, and something that you mentioned before, the Rogue going to be able to get out that additional damage as well, going to be able to build combo points off those ads and use finishing moves, which are devastating, onto that mini boss. So I think this is a good pull here from Kjelll's Angels.
Definitely. If you can control it well enough, I absolutely agree. You just don't want the scavengers to die before Gazerax, because he gains a ton of health. But as you can see, very well controlled. Gazerax is going to fall. There's some annoying mechanics you have to deal with Gazerax. Like, for example, there's an ability where you have to then turn around and make sure you're not facing him. Otherwise, you will be in a world of hurt. But beyond that, look at the control, and they're going to be able to move on to Smash Spite now.
And the big boy, the big boy. Yeah. It's always easy to mess those two up, but the big boys have entered the party. You can see him plummeting down on the side of Kjelll's Angels. Mythic NA going to be doing Gazerax all by his lonesome. And we talk about the utility on this team. That's going to come into effect for Kjelll's Angels once again here. The Paladin going to be able to trade out quite a bit of that utility here, but they don't have an immunity, and that's going to be around the focus effect that Thrashbite has.
Yeah, definitely. So you either go behind a bookcase when he actually charges at someone, or you can actually sit in between, like in between the boss. As you can see, he's standing in front of it, because the hitbox of this bookcase is slightly further forward than actually it does look. So Thrashbite there is going to get stunned for a moment, and then they will back on out. And once that bookcase actually dies off, some of the smaller ads are going to spawn. That's why you see the solar beam go down, so you can try and silence some of them in that solar beam to make them less painful.
Books are scary. It's the same in this game as it is in real life. Sometimes they can really take you for a trip here, and you're going to see that the books need to be dealt with very quickly. Although they may not seem like the scariest ad because they're literally just a book, these things can really mess you up. They really can knock you off your groove in this fight. And Kjelll's Angels in particular, very able to deal with them because of the Moonkin having that blanket silence. On the other hand, for Method NA, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on that. But Kjelll's Angels, not on their map pick here. They can close out the series, and slowly they are pulling further and further ahead.
I'm terrified for Method NA right now. I think that Kjelll's Angels is looking absolutely on point here with this boss. And unless something either really bad happens to Kjelll's Angels or really amazing that we haven't seen before happens on the side of Method NA, I'm not sure how they're going to catch up. So I'm expecting them, Kjelll's Angels, to look really strong.
But that's the important thing to note as well. These deaths that you do see, they were intentional.
Yep.
That was actually to pick up speed here. And we can see for a second there, Method NA looking a little bit scared. JB has quite a bit of work to do to keep his team healthy, but these deaths were intentional. We have seen both of these squads move through this without any unintended deaths. So for the most part, they are doing it perfectly. It's just Kjelll's Angels has been a little bit quicker.
Yeah, definitely. And important to note as well, down the line when we eventually get to that spider room that you were mentioning, up to the top with the mini boss and then the smaller spiders, sometimes we see an intentional wipe there as well after you've killed off the mini spider boss, and then the other spiders can't be cleaned up. And this is a really important moment, Rich.
This is a huge moment here, and once again, you are going to see that solar beam. It just seems to be the most important tool that Kjelll's Angels has had. Now they're going to have the knockback, and also going to be utility from the Moonkin using that Typhoon. So there's so much potential here. Now they're going to kite. Moonkin going to use that Starfall, can actually cast inside of the Starfall as well. And you can see the Monk and the Moonkin doing work, and this is another heroism from Kjelll's Angels.
Yeah, definitely. They want to absolutely make sure they're going to kill them, although they're actually quite high in health. You may see the small slither of health that they actually do have, but a lot of them got bolstered, and quite a bit gets away. 78%. Or 80%.
Backtrack here.
They may have to. Ooh, this is kind of getting a bit dodgy.
If you're watching at home right now and you're asking what happened, basically those demons were able to escape. That escape means that they are not going to count through percentage, and you see this bar, 81% for Kjelll's Angels. It needs to be 100 before they get all the bosses down, or they will not be able to complete the dungeon. Now Method NA has pulled ahead on Trash, and they still have more to work with here as well.
They're actually taking the spiders at the front. These ones currently, they don't give percent. The ones at the side do. They're bringing the mini-boss down here as well. Eventually, going to eventually try and deal with, I don't know, the mini-boss isn't here just here yet, but they want to bring everything together and focus this down. Kjelll's Angels
is a mess.
Taking some risks.
This is one of the pulls in particular, and you said, hey, look, some teams may just opt into skipping it, and that may even involve death, because, hey, look, that 5 seconds can be a lot less costly than actually trying to deal with these packs. Such different health pools, and when you're trying to whittle them down all nice and even, it can get out of hand. The tiniest crit can throw you off balance.
Well, Purgatory popped before as well for Divine Field, so he's not an indestructible machine at the moment. Okay, now it's gone. Wait, no, it's another
back,
debuff. Yeah,
just flickers every now and then.
Yeah, flickers. So beyond that, this is a very scary moment here for Kjelll's Angels. I was talking about, where Method could catch up, and I think this could definitely be it.
Yeah, so Divine Field as a tank basically has this indestructible mechanic that he can spec into called Purgatory, and you can see that little debuff, that black circle surrounded by green. Basically every time that before it has the debuff from Purgatory proccing, if Divine Field goes down, we'll be able to stay up in that Purgatory state and then be healed up. It is also going to be the Rogue that has a mechanic like that can be very important, but now we are going to see that mini-boss get engaged on the side of Kjelll's Angels, and it seems like a skip is not something that they want to do. Method NA, on the other hand, already has 92% of the trash down. That little misstep from Kjelll's Angels, the first place where we see them not look perfect, might bite them.
Yeah, it definitely will. Right now, dealing with this mini-boss is actually quite simple. Usually you'll kind of group up. It's difficult with Quaking. You have to eventually disperse out, but then group up again, because the boss will eventually teleport and then do an AoE cone. As you can see, the teleport goes out, and there comes the AoE cone that you quite easily move out of. All the little spiders are a concern, though. They really do hurt. They might just kind of AoE them down instead of going for an intentional wipe here. We'll have to see, because right now the tank is kiting them. You just not want to be tanking all of these little spiders at the same time.
And we know that Blood Death Knights aren't the most mobile, but still able to do it here. Slowly, they are going to be whittling those spiders down with Method NA in a good spot.
So looking at the percentages for Method NA, they have 5% left or so. In fact, actually, they're even going higher than this. Up at the top, you have to kill off some bats, which I think do give about 5%. Kjelll's Angels here with these spiders, they need to get to 95%, otherwise they are going to be doomed.
You can see that Purgatory proc, then ultimately they go, okay, we're just all going to die here. So I think that this is one of those moments where they said, okay, it's a calculated risk, and you can see those pylons come down. That's going to allow them to resurrect right here. I think they don't want to have to deal with those spiders. They think it's going to be a little bit too much time, but keep in mind, that is going to be 50 seconds against the time of Method NA, when only 25 seconds are against Kjell's Angels, and now Kjell's Angels have made it into the room. They're going to be pulling this boss, and both of the bosses that are left will be in this room, but there is going to be some bats in between that they can deal with to pick up that extra percentage. We have to see if it's going to be enough for Kjell's Angels to close it out as they do engage here on Dominatrax.
I'm really concerned for them. Let's see how it plays out. Of course, they pulled it to this right-hand side of the corner room as fast as possible because these little Fell Portal Guardians will spawn. You have to kill those off, otherwise ads will spawn from these portals. 2 will spawn at this phase, and then another 2 later on down the line here against Dominatrax.
Oh, something to keep in mind is I may actually like the lust timing. I almost criticized it, but the lust timing of Method NA now may be looking a little bit better than that of Kjell's Angels. I don't expect Kjell's Angels to get it back up, and Method NA can use it on whatever they deem for their composition the most difficult mechanics to deal with. Right now, the mechanics that they are going to be dealing with are these ads that are getting spawned out, and every now and then we will see massive amounts of damage coming out from Dominatrax, and what they can do is they can dive into that shield. They're not going to be able to do as much damage, and the shield's going to shrink, but they can stay alive and fight another day.
Yeah, now you may be asking, again, if you're not as familiar, why don't they just stay in shield the whole time? It actually does reduce the damage that you do to the boss, so you can't really do that. You have to go in and go out. Bit unfortunate on the timing of the Quaking there, as they just barely step in as the Quaking disperses and finishes off, but they handle it well and with precision. Now here come more portals. These portals are a little scarier. They do spawn those mistresses, which can do a ton of damage.
And they can also really mess up when you do try to get inside of that shield. They can knock you out of it, so you need to make sure that you get those mistresses down in time. Otherwise, it could easily result into a wipe. Some focus damage needs to come out here for both of these squads when they deal with the mistresses, but we're down to the wire here. It's a 25-second difference for Method NA as far as those deaths are concerned, and we have about a 20% difference between the boss percentage. That was really bad math. It's about 10% here. That was close.
Yeah, it's all right. I don't mind.
It's called rich math, and it's not very good.
The one advantage that you have on the side of Method NA is that they have the Warlock. So if mistresses become a big issue, you can at least just banish one. You can see one banished on that left-hand side next to the one that was knocked away. So they can do that. Dominatrax 20%. I'm still concerned here.
This is one of the places, though, where the Warlock really does shine, and you can also use Sifuz as well, and that's going to get you a little bit of that haste buff. You can opt into doing that, and Warlock doesn't even have to be getting full utility. Dominatrax going to fall to 10%, and ultimately, if they stay up here, the thing that we still have to be scared for, will they get enough percentage off the bats?
Well, for me right now it's looking unlikely, but overall though it seems like Dominatrax about to fall, and the bats will come out in a moment. And overall, what you will see, or normally see here, is that you will get like a res on anybody before you pull the bats if you've lost someone during that fight. These bats aren't even that much of a problem, to be honest with you. Just tank them away in terms of positioning, or how they're facing. Some bats will then fly through the room, actually just dropping some AoE, as you can see there. It's very, very simple to dodge out of.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this isn't a place where it gets out of control. These bats don't go too batty.
Cerelia.
We're going to see Cerelia, yeah.
I think he's looking for other trash.
I think this is what you have to do here. So
nice.
Going to pull that spider up. That's how they're going to complete their trash percentage here. The bat should fall down before Sierra gets back. Then they'll be able to snap onto that, and the boss will be popping up for them to deal with. This should be the 4 percentage that they need. A little bit of RP going down, and that's going to give them enough time to kill this before the boss even needs to be pulled. Ultimately, the second the boss gets up, they get the pull. Now they've pretty much mitigated the problem. Now it's down to the wire once again, but the lust is going to be popped on the side of Method NA. Is the lust going to be the determining factor here?
It might be. It really might be. We're actually getting so close again, Rich. I can't believe we're in this situation again. Going up against Mephistoth, there's a few things you got to watch out for. 2 players are going to get a debuff on them, and eventually they have to move away to place a big green circle away from the team, because that will then do some big damage. So that's the first thing you got to look out for him, as well as Carrion Swarm, which can just be turned away. You can fire that into the wall and be fine.
The really crazy part is when we do get to the phase where we see the boss kind of disappear. Illidan's going to be in the middle of the room, and someone needs to pick up the shield and defend Illidan from the ads that are shooting balls at him from around the room. If we see any of those balls connect, it's going to increase the amount of time that they're in this phase, and when they are in this phase, they cannot deal damage to the boss. This could slow them down so much. This could be the limiting factor.
Still got to look out for the bats as well. If Illidan gets hit, that's a catastrophe for these teams. Got to be super careful, super patient. I can hear the teams behind me calling for everything to go absolutely right. It is tense in here at the moment with these bats still being annoying. The shields continue on. Illidan on 99%. Did he get hit during this? I'm not even sure, but that could cost a few seconds if they're not careful.
It can cost quite a few, but ultimately they're going to get out of that phase, and they're just a tad ahead here of Method NA, even though Method NA did use that heroism. Guys, keep in mind, if Kjelll's Angels wins this, they are going to go to the grand final. The series is going to be over. We have Kjelll's Angels, who's trying to prove that they're the best team in the EU. Method NA trying to prove that they are the best team in the NA.
Death Grip back there on that ad, making sure that Ashan can get a little bit more damage. You don't want any more residual AoE damage going off. If, for example, that ad died before the boss, that would bolster the boss, making it all the more difficult to kill him off in terms of health. But right now, 35% against 42% here. Method NA needs to crank out more damage because that little ad will die right after this boss.
It needs to be a lot of damage too because of the deaths too. It's 10% and 25 seconds. How will Method NA be able to catch up? This was their map pick, and this could be their lives in the upper portion of the bracket. After this, they lose all their lifelines. They don't guarantee them spot in the grand final, and we are seeing them taking a substantial amount of damage. And if they don't get it down quick, we could go into another one of those intermission phases that we saw earlier.
But also, don't forget the 5 other deaths on the side of Method NA. They have been hugely impactful. An extra 25 seconds. It's almost impossible now for Method NA to really catch on up here. Kjelll's Angels, as long as that gives them the 4%, then they should be okay. But it looks like it's dead.
They're in the intermission. They're in the intermission right now. This is Method NA's chance to close this out. If they are for some reason able to take him down before he goes into the intermission, the intermission's going to last too long. They're going to be in the intermission, and ultimately Method NA, I think they have the chest. They're going to be able to close it out.
The Enforcer gives no percent. They're on 96% still.
They're on 96%, but the thing is they're still in this intermission phase. It's going to last too long. We're watching the clock tick down right now. 9 seconds. Ultimately, they're going to be able to catch every single one of those orbs, but they're going on to members. They can still get it here. 0%. They get it tied up.
Expect Method NA to have seen the videos. Either way, it comes down to this. Winner moves on. Guaranteed second place. Gentlemen, take it away.
Lars, are we going to see another photo finish? It just seems to be what we can expect from these two squads. This could very easily be a grand final, but whoever does win this gets that first spot in the grand final, and you already noted, this first pool could be for all the marbles.
All right, protection's been thrown up here. You can see already Divine Field taking quite a bit of damage. He's going to be using that Sky Step Potion as well, going all the way around. They want a big, massive pull here to try and reposition and try and do as much damage as possible. Huge Death Grasp coming in. There goes the Solar Beam as well, solidifying this. If any DPS go down in this moment, it could be terrifying. Oh, it's gone!
Oh no, that could be absolutely catastrophic, and we are seeing everything getting used as far as defensive utility is concerned as well. The cheat death is going to be popped here. Now we're going to need to see the monk roll on back over, not going to be buffed by that heroism as well. There's the cheat death, and you can see on the side of Method NA, it's looking like a struggle city as well. This is a very tough pool, especially on a 25.
Absolutely, with Fortified too, it's not easy. Divine is very low, 1% health. He's gone down. Oh, he's going to have to come back with this. This could be an absolute disaster, almost a full wipe. Kjelll's Angels feeling the pressure at the moment. They've gone for a huge pull though, bear in mind. Much bigger than what we saw from Method NA on the other side, and it has not gone well for them.
Could this be the boon that Method NA needed? They now could just kind of play this by the books for a little bit. 8 deaths come in on the side of Kjelll's Angels. We talked about how big the deaths were on the other side. It was a 5-death differential. Now it's going to be 40%. One thing that we didn't note as well was the fact that Necrotic is going to be the affix. So this is kind of the esports thing. Sometimes you really hear a bunch of the dirt. You hear a bunch of the strategies when you go to the bathroom in between series. And in between, I heard Kjelll's Angels just straight up healer and tank conversation of, okay, I'm going to spam you here. Okay, this is when I'm going to trade out this cooldown. They had the script, but still, this is such a difficult thing to pull off, and ultimately, Kjelll's Angels not able to do it. Method NA going to have one of the most definitive leads that we've seen between these teams in this 3-map series.
Absolutely. Method NA on the right-hand side here, going into another big trash pack pull. Important to note, here in Vault of the Wardens, about 50% or so of the trash is in these first 2 big pulls. Later on, it's much more of a hit focus on towards bosses. So this opening portion of this instance is so important to get right, and Method NA have passed so far with flying colors. Kjelll's Angels just did not execute the way they wanted to, despite them having said that they have huge practice on this moment in the dungeon.
And all of the dungeons, too, are going to be having these affixes here for the Mythic Dungeon Invitational, and each affix is going to add a special effect. And one of the things in this dungeon that's going to make it even more difficult if you are watching Mythics for the first time is the fact that all of that trash at the beginning is actually going to be empowered as well. So once we get past that big trash pool that Method NA has already made it past, all of a sudden, it is smooth sailing for them, and we're going to see that as they do engage the first boss here. Kjelll's Angels still behind, but on this first boss, what are the mechanics? It's still a 25 that they do need to be worrying about.
Tirathon is your standard Demon Hunter, although that being said, he has a few little different mechanics compared to a normal playable Demon Hunter. He's actually gone into his Vengeance spec here, and then from there you can see that glaives have been thrown out on the right-hand side. Between those two glaives, there is a chain that you can't exactly cross over unless you want to go around it per se, as it would do quite a lot of damage. And they've negated it well. They all went around the same way, and that's important to know.
And you are going to see that the Warlock just gets to stand on the outside, deal with all those volcanics. That's going to allow J.B to do even more damage here, get the team even further ahead, and then also those ads are going to come out. Another thing that the Warlock's really going to like, another thing that's also going to help those monks. So all in all, this is going to be a relatively easy fight for Method NA. Those Fel Fury's going to be coming up again. Everybody going to be getting their cleave, and we're also going to see the Warlock getting those shards off of it, which he can invest then for more damage onto the boss.
And now we're seeing the Demon Hunter go into his Havoc spec here, and there's a little bit more different things that you have to deal with. There's an I-Beam that comes along as well, but for the most part, it's not too difficult a mechanic. You saw the Fel Mortis before as well, and there you can see the I-Beam going down. Pretty easy to be able to dodge. Marvin was well away from that location, although he stood on a volcanic there, but he doesn't mind because he's a Warlock.
Yeah, you just get to press Drain Soul and heal yourself right back up. It feels really good being a Warlock myself, but I will say this is pretty much one of those fights right now where the main thing that you need to know if you haven't seen this dungeon before is you don't want to get hit by things and you deal damage to the boss. If you stay alive, you're going to be able to get him down, and ultimately here they are going to do just that, and now they're going to move forward to another pretty easy pull, instantly get into a series of bosses. The pathing is the most important thing that we need to keep our eye on with Method NA because they still do have that 48% trash.
You're going to see J.B on the left-hand side while the rest of them go on the right. This is so you can pull all of these imps together across two paths and then just be able to kind of blast them all down here next to this big imp mother in the middle that's going to be shooting out AoE cones later down the line, as well as some kind of AoE spheres that you just need to dodge out the way of.
And you can see the monk just absolutely deleting them, and finally Kjelll's Angels has been able to pull that first boss.
Ooh.
And it looks like they also pull a little bit of trash along with it, but we're going to see the death come in. Now 2 deaths on the side of Method NA. They are going to be able to recover, but this is going to close it down to 45 seconds in difference between the deaths on these 2 squads, and we need to see E-Man stay healthy here before they do get back to that next boss. One thing to note though, Purgatory now not going to be on cooldown.
Yeah, and do bear in mind as well that as much as Kjelll's Angels fell behind so early in this dungeon and it really, really cost them a lot, there are still a lot of dangerous things later on in the instance. Even though this is a fortified setting, some of the bosses can still have a few pesky mechanics, especially the Inquisitor that is my most hated boss in this entire game. But these guys are pretty good at dealing with it.
I'm loving casting with you more and more with every second. And I have quite a lot of difficulty on this boss sometimes myself, but we are going to be using those potions there to just crash on down, try to avoid that elevator, and that is a great way to make up time. Another thing that I do want to say with these bosses, especially with a team like Kjelll's Angels, it's a full speed run on these bosses. Try to make up your time on the bosses. Method NA try to further their lead. It's all going to come down to the trash. I think that's the main focal point for me, but why do you hate Inquisitors so much?
Because the mechanics, man. The mechanics. We'll talk about them in a second because they have also pulled some Defilers dogs with this as well. There's actually some other dogs up there that sometimes don't see too much pulled, but some teams do it. But these Defilers, easy percentage whilst you're killing off this boss. Now those beams you can see, there's actually eyes that have been spawned in the middle of this room, and if you don't face towards them at the end of their channel, they will disorientate you and cause you annoyance.
I will say the other reason that they're probably trying to avoid maybe some of that trash is because of the necrotic. That can be something that makes it all the more scary, a very tough mechanic to deal with, but ultimately here, the Inquisitor taking massive amounts of damage, but he will move around the room and actually summon more adds. And throughout the entire time, like you mentioned, you do need to be keeping your line of sight on those eyes. They can be a real pain.
Yeah, Sap Soul goes out as well, and that will eventually, the next ability that you use puts it on cooldown for a long time. You can actually see that they've kind of cordoned off one of those Annihilator ads because they're pretty irritating here on the side of this Demon Wing. Killing off the Warlock and Technician isn't too bad. This is actually one of the easier wings to really deal with, and then sometimes later on you will see alternate strategies. Some people do actually tank everything here and just kill it off at this location. Some wings are actually dealt with in other methods. Say, for example, no pun intended, they actually go on line of sight up a ramp and allow everything to come to them down the line.
That one was a little corny.
Yeah.
Kjell's Angels going to go for the same thing to pull all those imps around there. Now at the Imp Mother, they've gotten the first boss down. They are behind by 45 seconds. Method NA already at 40% on Inquisitor. Their lead looks great, but you already mentioned there are so many opportunities for Kjell's Angels to get back into this. I said a little bit earlier on in this series that this is a series between one of the teams that's looked the best in the EU and the team that's looked the best in the NA. Right now, they're trying to just prove, who cares about region? We are the best in the world, the best team in the MDI.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you see here with the Old Gods Wing, they've decided to just tank it where it spawns, which technically is the best way to do it if you're wanting to save time. You don't want to have to go on line of sight, wait for it all to come up to another angle, because that will cost you time in terms of the damage that you're actually losing. So they've dealt with Inquisitor really well here.
It's also an important thing to note, because somebody who maybe was running this dungeon more at the beginning of the expansion, we're very much at the end of Legion now, is probably used to having more of those Guardian Druid or Bear tanks, and those Bear tanks really did, for the most part, like to do the line of sight strategy. As we saw more and more Death Knights come into play, all of a sudden it made more sense to just move right to those ads because of the way that the Death Knight can actually use Gorfiend's Grasp to group up all of the ads.
Yeah, absolutely. Gorfiend's Grasp is such a powerful tool, and it's one of the main reasons why you're only seeing like Blood Death Knights really here at the MDI, along with things like Consumption and all of their other wealth of talents that they were able to kind of use in terms of defensive abilities. So now we're just moving up to a mini boss here, and they will be moving on to the next boss. Not too much really to deal with here. The Fell Scorchers can be a little irritant sometimes, but not too much.
The real important thing is now is we're starting to get slowly into the zone that Method NA is going to show their hand and show their pathing based off of which trash that they start to kill. Obviously, they still do have 2 more bosses to deal with. It's all going to come down to how they decide to pull the trash. Heroism going to be coming off of cooldown in about 50 seconds for both of these teams, because if you remember back at the beginning of the dungeon, when they go for that all-in pull, both teams going to pop that lust. Kjell's Angels now engaged on Inquisitor.
And usually you see a lot of that trash kind of left towards the end with the spiders. There's like a little, kind of a few little things that you need to deal with the light, which obviously we'll get onto later, but there's some trash down there that you just cannot avoid. So you kind of take into that account there for the percentage. And Kjell's Angels, 66% right now on Inquisitor, dealing with it okay. All the Divine Field was dropping a little bit low, but getting him nice and healthy again.
For the most part, they have the same utility to deal with this boss that we saw from Method NA. Once again, we can note that the Rogue's going to be able to get a little bit of additional damage. We've talked about that quite a bit, but this is Moonkin holiday fight. Like, this really is a very good fight for Moonkins. So this is one area where their composition will shine. The cleave is really good from the Moonkin, and you're also able to use that to just ramp up the amount of astral power that you are going to be getting. But now Method NA can set their sights on the next boss, and they have that 92%. So like you mentioned, we need to be thinking about that dark spooky room that's going to be coming up, because Method may be able to skip all the way up to the door and only do the mandatory gatekeeper trash before they get to the final boss.
Yeah, only the 6% left there. And for just an important note here on Fortified, the mini bosses before some of these rooms are buffed by Fortified, not by Tyrannical. So that's why that took quite a while. But on towards Glazer. Rich, what do you make of Glazer?
All right, this one is quite annoying at times. One of the things that you will note is the Warlock, even though range DPS going to be moving up to Glazer, that is because these orbs that are going to be coming in from the room, once to get that pathing locked on when close to the boss, you're actually able to min-max, move away from those orbs. You don't get hit by them, you don't take the damage, but the boss himself actually will. But the main thing that we need to be paying attention to is this phase that Glazer goes into going to be in this shield.
The Hall of Mirrors. So all you've got to do here, once you see his beam moving around, everyone needs to click on some of these mirrors. That beam will eventually hit one of the mirrors, and then all of the mirrors then have to be in the right trajectory from one another to then bounce to each other so that you get this. So it bounces all the way back to the shield and is able to destroy that, opening things up, and then you're right back to Glazer again.
How I feel very often when I look in the mirror with what I wear. But Glazer going to be taking some increased damage as well, and you can see Mythic Dungeon obliterating this boss, and they're about to down it in the same time that we see Kjelll's Angels finally get down Inquisitor. Inquisitor down for them. They're now going to be working on that mini-boss that really did take quite some time for them to take down, as Mythic Dungeon now can make their way on over to the next boss, where we know this is a boss that can be melted very quickly.
Mythic NA is absolutely in the driving seat right now. All they have to do is play patiently, calmly, and be able to round things out, and they will be victorious. It's just a matter of that. Even just small min-maxes with Marvin throwing down that portal so everybody can get a little bit closer to Ashgolm, a little bit faster here, as he's going to be the next boss, and it's a song of ice and fire, I think.
It definitely is, but you want it to be a song of ice just a little bit more, because when we actually do see Ashgolm go back into that little ice cube, he's going to be brittle, he's going to take increased damage, and that is when we are going to see him get absolutely deleted here. And you can see Marv's positioning. He's trying to make sure that they get that damage buff as quick as possible. All they'll need to focus on is damage here, and you can see right now, this is where we will see Ashgolm's health get absolutely, it will vanish.
Yeah, start powering out some of the damage here at the moment. You can probably get it to about 50% here, maybe, if we're being lucky with how long this is going to take, or maybe I'm being a bit ambitious. But regardless, when he comes out of this phase, there's a few other mechanics that you're going to have to deal with. Small patches of flame on the floor that you don't want to be standing in, as well as some ads that will eventually spawn.
I want to keep in mind at home, if they were doing this in the keys that we typically run, if you saw that in a 15 right now, it would have been absolutely dead. We see the monks almost hitting 3 million DPS during that phase. There was so much damage coming out there, but in this 25, it doesn't matter what the affix is going to be. It is going to be a lot of boss health.
And the repositioning here on the boss, just to try and kind of manipulate a little bit of where those flame patches are going to be spawning, as well as potentially when the ad comes along and they can try and get onto that as fast as possible. They may not even have to be honest with you, in this fortified setting, as they're just burning down Ashgolm nice and healthy. Meanwhile, Kjelll's Angels on the other side, on Glazer, 72%, and they're moving into the mirror phase.
They are, and they're going to be getting down that overloaded lens right now so they can get all the mirrors in the right place onto the boss, and then they should be able to get Glazer down without a problem. But the main thing that has caught my attention right now is Kjelll's Angels is actually overpulled trash as well. And it's kind of similar to what we see when the panic ensues when they don't get all the trash down that they want to get down in the last dungeon, and they need to do things on the fly. That happens again. Their pool doesn't work. They need to do things on the fly. They have the deficit due to their deaths, but now, even though they have 100%, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, as we get to that final room before that last boss, they are going to have to take down that trash to even get the door to open, so they have to pull extra trash.
Absolutely. Stole the words right out of my mouth, my friend, because, yeah, you're right. You cannot just skip it. You can't just skip it because it will not open otherwise. So you see here, Mythic NA once again just powering forwards. That Warlock Portal that they had there before, going to be second multi-use, and just going to be throwing down Marvin once again.
I think that we just saw Marvin actually switch legendaries just for movement there to get that extra time. Hey, that's a legendary too, that as a Warlock, when you get it, you go, I'm not even going to read it. It's terrible. And you're going to see Marvin just using every single thing in the toolkit to cruise on by.
Good skip. This little boss, little mini boss, can be an irritant. So just going to skip that, allow bad name to die, and then get that res going here. Good stuff. Really good routing by JB and the boys right now, as they're going to be heading down. They don't need that. They only need 6% worth with the Avalanche Potion now coming in to eventually get themselves down to the Dark Room.
And the Avalanche Potion here going to be timed very well for 2 of the members on the team. Not going to work for all of the others, but still, that is the right way to go about it. You're going to incur a little bit of time because of the deaths, but JB going to be able to instantly get everybody up as they do pull the light. Now, this is crucial. How much trash can they skip?
Yeah, so they're actually using their Invis Potions and trying to get down probably to the very end of this room.
No!
Oh, bad name. That's not a best of positions here. And actually, some people are actually going to die off elsewhere. Bad name's just going to move to the side and make sure that these are not going to aggro everybody else down the line. But these deaths could cost usually.
No. I think he got the pylon down.
He got the pylon down. He got the pylon.
So he's going to be able to get the pylon, going to be able to res. Now, it's also good because it is J.B, so he also does have his stealth. If he does need to reposition here, he's going to be able to grab that light. He should be able to get everyone up. But now, all of a sudden, we are in a situation where it's much truer to form. Where we see them on the map is really going to be where they be, because it's 12 to 9 deaths. It's very, very even. And now we need to make sure that this res gets done well. This is all of a sudden a very, very close race. There's not much trash dividing them now. Ash Golem at 42%.
Yeah.
Will Kjelll's Angels, after that major disaster that they have, be able to catch up?
So usually this is a very windy path if you're just doing it in a normal fashion. However, there's spots you can actually just jump down and be able to skip a ton of the trash. Because actually, along this windy path, there's tons and tons of trash. But as you can see, they've now been able to stabilize, get themselves in a good spot, killing the trash that they have to kill to get that door open. They just need the 6%, and then they'll be on the last boss here to be able to eventually round out this dungeon.
Here's just a little bit of insult to injury, though, from Method NA. That Invis obviously doesn't work. It adds a whole bunch of time, a whole bunch of deaths to their run, but on top of that, because they invested that Invis potion, they are not going to have a lot of utility when they actually do head into this boss. So this is a very scary thing to look at here, and I wonder what they are going to do. We see J.B run ahead to try to get everything started. There's a RP on this boss, just going to talk for a while before he can actually hit it. Now he's going to be running back to his group. Kjelll's Angels now has that boss down. Let's see how they decide to get into the room of Cordana.
It's like an attempt at a kind of a distraction here, and then the Shroud of Concealment will kind of skirt around that little mini boss and then eventually move up towards that. Shroud of Concealment still up on some of these members, so they can skip the next mini boss as well, hopefully without too much. And you see Method NA now approaching the final boss here, but I don't know if Kjelll's Angels is going to be able to catch up. They need Method NA to wipe here on this boss, I feel, to really kind of get themselves in a better spot.
And I think that they really do, and the main thing is Heroism's already going to be up for Method NA, so they get to use it at the exact moment they want, and they have a battle res to fall back on. They're still ahead by a few deaths as well. Let's pay attention to the mechanics here. What do they need to be doing, Method NA, to close this one out clean?
Well, the light mechanic's very important. You saw that little light that they picked up from the statue earlier. Obviously, you've got to avoid that little glaive that you just saw shoot out to the left-hand side, but that light will not only dissipate some of the pools on the floor that you're going to see, the purple pools that are pulled down by the boss, but also eventually Cordana Felsong will disappear, show this avatar of shadow, and then you need to kill that off. Then, when you've killed that off, that will drop your light, you pick that back up, and you're able to go over and reveal the boss wherever it may be. So once they reveal her, they can get back to DPSing.
And they have already gotten back to DPSing. The other thing that we need to note is there's going to be this wall phase that essentially happens, where Cordana is going to be sending walls across. They're basically shadowy images of herself. There's going to be one opening in those walls, and the member with the light basically needs to reveal them to the group so they know where they are. You stand in those openings, you make sure you don't get hit. If you get hit, it can very easily be a wipe. The other thing that we need to see the person with the light do is stand into those dark zones that are put on the ground and clear them up. Cordana Felsong dip in here below 40% at 46% now, and Kjelll's Angels looks like they have already gotten the RP going. They are going to be pulling this boss basically 50% behind with a few deficits from their deaths as well.
And there we go. Now that you can see the walls spawning, they do disappear after showing for just a second, and then the light will show them. So you see there, up to the top right, that was the first gap. Down to where purple is where the next gap's going to be. That purple marker is going to be quite important later on. We can focus on that after this wall phase. I didn't even see where the gap was on that last wall, but they know it's right on this left-hand side. Ooh.
But they need to go for a very tricky run, though, right now, and this is one of the main opportunities that they really do have to wipe. If they mess up on this wall phase, this could be where we see Kjelll's Angels catch back up. Another battle res, though, going to come up for Method NA, so all of a sudden they're looking really good. This is where they're going to move over to that diamond that you mentioned.
Yeah, so they really want to position the boss over towards this diamond, because when that transition phase comes once again, you know it's going to spawn right here.
Hero.
So they
There's
can actually catch it instantaneously as it spawns and negate a lot of what is problematic here with that usual transition phase.
That hero is going to potentially close out this series, because they're going to be able to bring that down that ad instantly, get onto Cordana, and not have to worry about much more. Method NA able to close this out after such an impressive performance by Kjelll's Angels. Truly, two of the best teams in the world.
What a showing coming out from them.
Are we?
Oh, that's some fire right there. We can hear them in the studio at the moment, kicking off. Method NA able to make the finals.
The well-deserved pop-off there. You absolutely hear it in the background. I'm going to ask the hard question immediately. Did they just get given that one?
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say so much, because even as we see here as well, Kjelll Angels had a very, very rough start at the start of this instance, costing them literally minutes.
This was their pull, though. This was the pull that we talked about. They had mastered.
Yeah.
Other teams had seen them make it as part of why they are so good at this dungeon. What went wrong with the pull?
I mean, so pulling that much, there is so much residual damage going on everywhere, and you have to be completely on your game to be able to dodge it. Unfortunately, I think we had 3 deaths overall on DPS, and then, of course, a tank death.
This reminds me as well as one of those pulls. This goes all the way back to the first MDI when we were in Karazhan, and there were those big pulls with the Firelands portals. It was that team's special pull where they said, essentially, this is our map pick. This is where we can win. It's such a difficult pull, though, especially on such a high difficulty. It didn't work for them. It didn't work for Kjelll Angels.
I'm joined here by band name, also known as E-Man here from Method NA. Now, the first game of the series, you guys had this reverse sweep, incredible. What was kind of going through your head? And I saw JB trying to calm everybody down and try to relax everybody after losing that Nels by about 11 seconds. What was going on there?
Honestly, the Nels is just something that we didn't feel confident in. We thought Kjelll Angels was going to drop a low 20 Nels probably if they did it the way they wanted to. I mean, we had no idea where they were. So our whole game plan is just play our game and, you know, see where it goes.
Without a doubt. Now, for you personally, you participated in the last MDI. You guys came a little bit short in the semifinals. What does it mean for you going into the grand finals here when you weren't even sure about what the team you were going to be going into at the start?
Yeah, I mean, it feels great to be picked up by JB and the Method guys as a team. As far as, you know, last year it was heartbreaking. I thought we really had a good shot. I'm excited for the finals. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much, E-Man, and congratulations to Method NA. Back to you guys on the desk.